From the Pep Radio Newsroom, this is the Hourly News Blast. This is part two of a two-part story on Rape Crisis Center funding in Pennsylvania. Trib Live is reporting that Center for Victims Canine Advocacy Program, as described on its website, aims to reduce physiological, emotional, and psychological impacts on individuals involved in criminal investigations or legal proceedings by utilizing the calming presence of highly trained dogs. It is not the only program feeling the effects of flat funding. While MacDonald has been able to fundraise in order to keep providing furry friends to survivors, not all programs have been as fortunate. I've had a program who had human trafficking resource room that could be used if maybe a survivor of trafficking needed a safe place to stay overnight, and they worked in conjunction with law enforcement as a resource, Romeo said. They ended up having to decide between cutting a staff member or cutting that resource. The program ultimately had to stop offering the resources to victims of trafficking, she said. Renee Wrights is executive director of the Blackburn Center, an anti-violence organization in Greensburg. She said the agency has begun looking into which services it is going to have to cut if the 2025-26 proposed budget passes. Yeah, that is, if the PA Senate ever gets off their lazy asses and gets back to work. The first thing being cut is education. Blackburn Center uses a large portion of its rape crisis funding to provide educational programming such as awareness and prevention education for students across schools in Westmoreland County. However, after 5 years, the center won't be able to continue operating the same way. If we get level funding, it'll be horrible for the survivors, horrible for the community, and we are going to see the impact, Wright said. If we do not get more funding, we are going to see an uptick with sexual violence. Many rape crisis centers experience frequent staffing turnover. Romeo said this stems from two factors: secondary trauma from advocating for survivors of sexual abuse, harassment, and rape, and low pay for hours worked. Operational costs are going up. How are we able to pay our staff to do the work that's necessary when they're wearing so many hats and the vicarious trauma piece, Wright said. According to Romeo, once staff members leave, the centers are then forced to decide between taking on a new hire or maneuvering around existing staffers to cover the responsibilities of the now open job. Often they decide it will take more resources to train someone new in the position, and the workload of what would typically fall to 5 advocates then falls to 3. I just think at this point we're at an extremely critical time, Lukema said. Sadie Restivo, executive director of Pittsburgh Action Against Rape, said the bulk of the organization's budget is paying employees' salaries. This is difficult because of the services that rape crisis centers are legally required to provide, such as staffing, a 24/7 helpline, and responding to all calls from medical or legal law enforcement within an hour of receiving them. It's getting increasingly difficult to be able to respond when funding just is not matching the need, she said. MacDonald said she doesn't know why domestic violence received increased funding last year and rape crisis did not. She blames the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Respect Together, which is made up of the National Sexual Violence Resource Center and the Pennsylvania Coalition, PCAR. If it's anyone's fault, it's theirs, MacDonald said. Coalitions are not focused on the people who are really being tortured out here by predators. MacDonald feels that within recent years, the coalitions have not been advocating to legislators as much as previous years. At least I don't see it, she said. Romeo responded to that statement by citing several of PCAR's lobbying efforts over the past year, including ongoing meetings with Governor Shapiro's office, the Department of Human Services, Congress, and appropriations chairs. She also mentioned the organization's request since 2024 for an $8 million increase to the rape crisis line item. That increase, Restivo said, gets divided among the centers by the size and population and the hours of services, depending on what county that you're in. For somewhere like PAAR, it could really change the outcome of this year's budget for us. PCAR also hosted virtual funding meetings about the impact of flat funding, forwarded letters to Congress, attended the Western Pennsylvania Advocacy Day in April, and held a rally for survivors at the state capitol. Wrights believes PCAR has been active in working with legislators. I've met with PCAR to meet with legislators. Wright said, I feel that we are doing everything we can. That's the News Blast at this hour. If you're watching our videos on YouTube, Be sure to subscribe to our channel. Pennsylvania Equality Project and PEP Radio are participating in Crawford Gives Days 2025, which is our only major fundraising event of the year. For details, visit the PEP Radio page at paequality.com. Up next, we have the Meadville area weather forecast here on PEP Radio.